So I feel like I should introduce you guys because you guys have been talking a little bit, but I feel like saying, Christy, Ross, Christy, these are like two friends of mine. Ross lives here in Vernon as well, and we found each other through human design. I can't even actually remember how we found each other, Ross. We'll have to go into that. And then Christy, I just loved I was so inspired by Christy's Instagram page and the beauty of the way that she's got this incredible consistency in like going through each of the hexagrams. And I was like, I need to know this woman. I heard about you from a mutual client that we have actually. And so it was just so neat because whereabouts are you again? You're on
Cortez Island.
yeah, Cortez Island. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice.
cool. So yes, Ross, Christy Ross.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Ross.
Nice to meet you, Christy.
Yeah, I always love people who are interested in human design and gene keys because we can just dive down the rabbit hole together and there's not so many people
Totally.
you can do that with. So I feel really blessed to be with you both.
Aw.
And that's exactly how I met Sarah, was that I was getting into gene keys and human design, and I looked to see if there was anybody in the area that was doing the same, and that's how I
Mm.
found Sarah. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's part of the impetus for this specific conversation too, because I've not found that my my curiosity for understanding the sixth line has been satiated. I don't
Yeah.
really feel like somebody's given me something that's concrete that really kind of helps. And I work with other sixth line people, and it comes up. There's this theme in the 6-2 profile in particular, which the three of us are, which within this theme, there's this inadequacy theme, as well as like this deep hunger to go through life from that inadequacy space of like, I need to achieve one more thing. I need to understand one more thing. I need to go and explore this experience a little bit more. And that can almost feel like this insatiable hunger that's built in for a purpose, right? It's there intentionally. And so when somebody kind of gives permission to be like, you're meant to be this way, that's actually your soul guiding you. It's like, oh,
Mm.
really? Oh, okay, because I thought I was broken for a really long time, as many of us do. So yeah, maybe Ross, if I'll get you to speak to how you discovered human design, how you use it, and who you are, and then I'll get Christy to do the same. I'll do that. And then we'll give people a little bit of a context of like, what are we talking about here? And where did it all come from and all of that stuff.
Sure. So myself, my introduction to human design, I'm not exactly sure of the date, but it was introduced to me by a coworker, and I kind of pushed it away. I was like, it doesn't make sense. It's like, what is this graph? What are all these images? Like, how do I learn more? And it just, I think at the time I didn't have space for it, and I just gently pushed it off to the side. And I don't think it ever really left though, because even though I did that, it was still in the back of my mind. And then, so I'm guessing that would have been like 2017, 18, somewhere around there. And then during COVID, I ended up doing a masterclass of some kind with Lee Harris, and there was someone on there who did human design, and that somehow brought it back. And I ended up getting a deeper dive guide from the person that was sharing human design. And then again, it kind of lingered, the same thing. And then it was 2.5 years ago that it came back full force. And I was like, okay, I really want to learn about this.
Mm.
And so for me, I use human design really as a tool alongside the intuitive counseling that I do. And I find it a really great way to kind of inform me, but also inform the client and not get into the depth of it. It's like I can just pull out these little tidbits of information that can guide what the client might be showing or trying to understand. And then I'm mixing some gene keys because I love the journey from shadow to city, and I think that gives a great context. So I use it as a tool alongside mainly, but I also do readings and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Amazing. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about you, Christy? How did you discover human design?
So I used to watch a YouTuber named Dara Dubonnet, who's just full of light, and she's a plant-based chef and creator. And she had Jenna Zoe on before Jenna Zoe started her very successful now career in human design. And her energy and the way she relayed the information just completely captured me. So I looked my chart up, and it was just such a sigh of relief and permission granted to be myself when I discovered that I was a projector for one thing. It just all made so much sense. And then being a 6'2", and of course having emotional authority, just, needing to take my time and not rush through my life and not rush to make decisions. So all of those, the big pieces of my design just really landed with me and resonated so strongly. So from there on in, I just kept researching, and I followed different people teaching human design and did my own studying on the side as I was raising my two small children. Um, and which eventually led me to the Gene Keys, and Richard Rudd, as I was telling you before, Sarah, I just love the way that he takes the more feminine, right brain approach, where human design is so structured and logical and left brain, and like having the synthesis of both of those paths just made so much sense to me. It just enriches the entire system to a whole new depth. Yeah, so I keep learning, I keep growing, and I share with my clients my own synthesis of the two. And then of course, like other teachings that have really enriched my own life personally, like Abraham Hicks, the teaching of law of attraction and, being the creator of our own reality. And we truly are here to be sovereign creators. And I just feel like human design is so supportive of that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, beautiful. We'll talk about the types, like you mentioned, the projector type, and Ross is a manifesting generator. We'll talk about the types in a bit. I'm also a projector. And yeah, I think you guys have really just touched on it, like that permission to look at this chart, this magical chart. How I discovered it was like a friend of mine had the Gene Keys book and was reading the sphere that's like the sphere of my life's work, the day that I'm born. And the sphere that is that related to that day that I'm born on was everything that I've been grappling with my whole life, like in a chapter. Like it was just like somebody just saw me and my life, and I've been trying to see me and my life my whole life, and I've been trying to get everybody else to see me and my life without knowing what it was, like fighting to understand all of these parts. And so to have this permission slip of like, yeah, this is your theme, this is going to be what comes up, this is actually the way to look at how you can respond to that, and this is like, this side of yourself that you might not see from the Gene Keys. Like you said, Richard Rudd does this beautiful job of like, this is how shadows can show up in this way that the energy moves through the body. And it gave me permission to love and have more compassion for people in a way that I didn't realize I was judging them, or I didn't realize that I was, prescribing what I saw in life as the thing that they would see in life. And why the heck wouldn't they understand that? Because it's so clear to me that this is what's going on. And when I started to realize the uniqueness of where everybody sits at, it was just like this permission to ask more questions to help me understand why would they see it that way. And then the more I started to understand why they would see it that way, it was like, wow, this is genius. How could they see it any other way? And here I was like judging, that element of like the perfection of this person's being, this perfection of their life and all of that. And so now it's just a state of reverence and openness and like so much more curiosity and magic in life. It's like, it's the practical elements of magic that I was looking for. In my chart, I have I'm Leo, but I'm like very rising Capricorn, rising Virgo, North Node in Virgo. So I'm always, and my moon's in Capricorn. So there's this theme of like, but how do we take the magical and make sense of it? Like, how do I take science and mysticism and weave them together? Because I feel like there's something that's really beautifully missed in this. And that's what I love this word, the synthesis, because human design is a synthesis. It's a synthesis of astrology, of the Kabbalah and the teaching of the Kabbalah and how the different dimensional layers work with each other. It's a teaching of the Vedic system, which is the Vedic chakra system also aligns with the biology of the body. So the glandular system, which is our magnetic communication system of the body, aligns with these layers of consciousness that we know as chakras or chakras. And then the I Ching element, which for whatever reason is the one I have the most family line of experience with, it, these 64 archetypes of universal attributes of truth is one of the expressions that I love that Richard Rudd uses all the time. This calendar of the wheel that's showing us changes. It's I Ching is also translated to the Book of Changes. And within that, the map that we come into all of these different elements of this moving mandala of light and sound and matter. And then that becomes this, this auric Merkaba, sometimes is what I call it, this like auric light body. And somebody actually gets to talk about what your auric light body is instead of seeing your physical body. It's like, no, you're so much more. And here's a place for the so much more. And we're in this beautiful time of humanity coming to a recognition of, wow, there is so much more than we have been led to believe is available to us. And the key into it is really like, who are you? Who are you really? To know where you really fit in all of these big parts. And so, yeah, my background being in massage therapy, and then working in like business around the health wellness industry, and then coaching business around the health wellness industry, and then coaching people that are practitioners sort of within like all of it, it gave me this other layer of getting really specific to how do they shine. It was always this like, how do I help people shine as who they are? And then this really, as a tool, a lot of the time I use it however I use it, whether it's in business and personal or in friendships or in family, it's always this space of like a talking point. If somebody says to you a few words that are related to your life, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I want to explore that more. And it goes straight to intimacy. We have deep conversations really quickly. We're able to kind of connect on a layer that I wasn't feeling like I was getting as organically in life. And this is a theme for the 6-2 profile, right? Like the 6-2 profile that we all have is like, how do we really find out the whole story though? How do we go deep in a dynamic? And so,
Yes.
yeah.
That's why I love my work so much. I feel like we get to see human beings at this profound level that most people miss, when we're just on the mundane kind of everyday living surface of things. But we get to dive deep into people's, their signature essence, basically their core essence. And it's just so beautiful to help people see that, kind of reflect it out for them so they can truly see themselves clearly. But one of the words, like I have 6-2 friends, and one of the words that we all kind of agree on for the 6-2 profile is depth.
Yep.
There's this depth to the 6-2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of call on both of you for teaching elements because I want to hear how you express what a 6-2 is. So, Ross, maybe I'll get you to share, like when people want to know about their profile, how do you give them the kind of the context of what a profile is?
I always just describe profile as, this kind of the same thing that an actor would receive when they were learning about their character. And I find that profile is actually the area of human design that people resonate with the most. And so I always make sure to include that whenever I can, because it's just like, oh yeah, that's so me. Yes, that makes so much sense. And it just describes the essence of who we are and kind of the framework in which we work with. And I know for myself with the 6-2, when I learned about the 6, I was just like, oh my gosh, like it was actually, the timing of it was impeccable when I learned it, because I was going through, you talked about inadequacy, and I had gone through this phase of like feeling so inadequate, and definitely connecting with that imposter syndrome of the 5 line, and then seeing it laid out, and being able to see like, what experiences was I having around that 30-ish mark, and around the well, I think I discovered human design around that 50, so I just turned 50 when I really got into it during COVID. And that was just like, bing. And one of the things, I just loved that because it made sense of this journey that I had gone through of just gathering all this wisdom along the way. And then finally getting to a place where I could really live it and embody it and feel it, and feel permission even to live that way, and to have the ability to share my wisdom. And interestingly, and of course, I was going through a shamanic immersion, I think in 2017-18. And at the end of that, there was a sharing of medicine, what individual medicine we all carried. And what was shared with me was that my wisdom was, or my medicine was, compassionate wisdom. So flash forward into learning about human design and the gene keys. And of course, my sphere of culture in the gene keys is gene key 48, which is the journey from inadequacy to wisdom. And I was just like, I felt so empowered by that. And so that was all sort of, from that idea of purpose and that journey and the reflection of both that gene key and the profile in human design. So it was just amazing revelation that came from that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. The part that I really have enjoyed is this theme of, instead of looking at our life like through the lens of psychology, which is like, how do we fix your inadequacy? It's like, what is the intelligence of inadequacy? And if it was perfect and leading you, what could that look like? And so it's a very different way of looking at some of these feelings that we have, that we're like, oh, I got to fix this feeling that I have. It's like, no, what if there was an intelligence to that? And so, yeah, thanks for that.
Absolutely.
How about you, Christy? How do you describe what a 6-2 or what a profile in human design is to people?
Yeah, I also see it as our role. It's like what we play out in the world. And I do also see that my clients really strongly resonate with their profile. Yeah, it's really kind of how we dance in life, how we engage with life in our own way. And so the sixth line I've always connected to, because I've always really deeply cared about transformation and getting to the truth of things, like the real truth, the cosmic truth. And then the 2, I've always connected to as well, because I do have this deep need to hermit, this body that really wants to feel protected and safe, and really loves to steep in my own energy. So the 6-2 is interesting, because the 6th line, there is a lot of mystery around the 6th line. And having the 3 different phases, it's a whole process. It's a whole evolution, which is quite different from the other lines. But the 2 is also a mystery to me, to be honest. I feel like the 2 on the design side, it's in the more unconscious energy. It's in the body. It's in the form. And the 2 has this natural genius, this natural talent that just wants to express and wants to come out into the world. But we don't know what that is. There's this mystery within each of us, and we don't know when it's going to arise. We don't know what it is. So do you guys feel that way too about your second line?
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, there is some mystery there for sure. And there's some things that I've heard along my journey of, like, the hermiting and the withdrawing. And I love being around people, but I definitely love my alone time as well. And I love that, like you said, steeping in what you're learning. And at the same time, it can also feel lonely at times, which is probably my conditioning.
Well, you're also a split definition.
Right.
You need
Right.
people. I'm a single
I
definition.
do.
I'm kind of okay in my own process,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. And Sarah, actually, you connect my split. So you actually bring me
Ooh,
that one gate that completes my split. Yeah. Which is
right.
interesting. But yeah, the 2, I sometimes feel like, and I think it's the 6-2 together that creates this, but it's like, I feel so clear about what I'm throwing out. And then people look at me like, what are you even talking about? Like, it's like, there is too much depth, or it doesn't make sense to them. And I find that really interesting. But I also really value, I think the 2 I've heard values relationship. And so that piece of, like, being in relationship with anyone, it's so much richer. So it's interesting that the pull between wanting to not connect with others and be steeping, and then also needing to connect with others. And there's ways that shows up in my gene keys in terms of, like, utilizing my network and connecting in that way. Like, I actually had an experience on Monday or Tuesday, it must have been Tuesday, and I was at an event, and I just wanted to just be in my experience of the event. And the host, who is a projector, walked over to someone and said, "Oh, you have to meet Ross. He does human design." And I was just like, I was shocked as much as I was like, I wanted to be in my space. And then I had to, like, turn on that part of me to engage with this person. And it was a little bit of a shock to my system, because I was just there at that event for me. I wasn't even thinking about networking. So, that it's just a great example, I think, of that wanting to hurdle,
Go inward.
yeah, hermit. Go inward. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to add more to that, Christy? Was there more that
Yeah, I love what you said about the relationship part of the second line, because there is this biofeedback, right, that the second line needs from the other. we kind of need that relationship and that reflection. And the interesting thing about the second line is it has to be the right person. It has to be, they always say it's the call, right? The second line is waiting for the call, and it has to be just perfect for us to be able to let down our barriers and truly, like at a deep level, let that in. So I've always resonated with that. Like I'm not here for everyone. I'm here for like my people, my very specific people. And those relationships have the potential to be really profound. And
Yeah.
as a sixth line too, I've heard Ross say like later in life, because we're on the roof for so long and we're integrating and we're healing, and there, you know, the focus isn't necessarily as much on relationship. But then after the Chiron return, there's this potential to have super deep, flourishing relationships in life. So that just gives me so much hope and, you know, excitement for the later years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm aware that some people might not be able to follow some of this. So I'm going to give like just a little bit more of the mechanics of what we're speaking about. So the profiles, there's 12 profiles, much like the zodiac. And I really like looking at it like somewhere along the line, I picked up this expression, which just really matches. And it's like the costume of your design. And you guys have both been alluding to this essentially, but it's sort of like if somebody gave you a script or somebody gave you your character in the play of life, ours would be this exemplary human that is like, has a deep longing to be an embodiment of sage wisdom, you know, and then I'll get into the mechanics of sort of where those come from. So every day of the year, there's a new expression of consciousness that is mapped from the I Ching wheel of the year. So in the zodiac, we've got roughly 28 days where we have exposure to one of the zodiac signs, but in the I Ching, there's 6 days for each of the 64 hexagrams of the year. And so if you're born on the first day of the hexagram, you have a profile that starts with the number 1. If you're born on the 6th day of the hexagram expression, you have a profile that starts with the number 6. And they have these correlating unconscious numbers that you were speaking about that have to do with this other marking that's taken when we're in utero. So we have the birth date marking that we get where are all of the planets in the I Ching expression on the day that you're born, the moment you're born, and the time is important for this because the time actually shows us like what is the stars and planets that are in expression and how do they imprint you at the moment of your birth to influence your soul's trajectory in life, or your soul, and like you were saying, that biofeedback, your soul combined with your body as an instrument that's moving through life with an imprinted theme. And so our imprinted theme has this costume of movement towards wisdom, would be another way of kind of summarizing it really quite quickly. The beautiful part about human design that is like a real sort of game changer for a lot of what I'm working with now is the ability to look at the unconscious in a very conscious way, to map out the unconscious. So anything that happens to us in the early parts of our life, we don't necessarily have memory or the ability to language. We don't necessarily have the capacity to bring sharing into a dynamic of what we're feeling, because in our early parts of our development, it's mapped into our body instead of into our mind. Our mind might have access to it, but we call it unconscious. And a lot of that is able to be spoken to because one of the imprints comes from this time between the 2nd and the 3rd trimester. In astrology, it's called 88 astrological degrees of the moon. And it's this marker of rolling the calendar back of like, okay, you're born this day, but what are the planets that were influencing you in your body being built? And that allows for us to speak about, there's in somatic work, a lot of somatic work that people talk about is actually top-down somatic work. So you could, in human design, you could parallel this to like the birth chart, the black planets in the human design chart is your top-down somatic. And your design side or your unconscious side is your bottom up somatic. And so it just flows, is the river of consciousness flowing through, and all we can do is really witness it. And the beautiful part about this is we're more our being self, which is that imprint from within in utero, than we are our doing self. So we have these two kind of elements of consciousness now that could be spoken about or described or explored because of the chart being able to say, you're going to have proclivities that look like this, or you're going to have a real willingness to pursue this, or you'll have a willfulness about this, or, you know, those elements. And then that becomes a greater and greater opportunity for self-discovery as well as relational discovery. Yeah. Do you guys feel like either one of you can talk about sort of the mystical parts of, like, because I could go a little bit into like Karen Curry Parker's side of like the masculine and the design crystal and the Ross, do you feel like you could teach on the design crystal, or Christy?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, it's actually something that kind of, it hasn't fully locked in yet for me. It's like, I mean, some of the principles of it for sure. I can give you like a quick overview, and then if either of you want to jump in, you can do that.
That'd be great. I have a slide I can pull up too that might be helpful.
Because it's, to me, it is quite profound, the teachings around that, because so my understanding is that so we have three crystals that end up being in our body. The one is, two of them come in as one crystal into the G center, if that's correct. And then they actually split. So the one that rises up goes up to our ajna. The one that stays in the G center is the magnetic monopole. And then we've got the personality crystal that is in the head center. And it does speak to the aspects of being and doing and that connection to spirit. The magnetic monopole is a one-sided. It's not a positive or negative. It's an attraction field. So it's always bringing us what it is that we need to experience and what we need to say yes or no to, or make decisions around. And then the design crystal is in our ajna is like the vehicle of our life. It's like, you know, and the personality is like the passenger. So you know, we're taught and conditioned that we need to be the driver of this vehicle, when really the magnetic monopole is the driver, and you know, the design crystal is the vehicle, and we're in the back seat. And yeah, it's funny, yesterday I was having some thoughts around that, and I could imagine myself as a child. I used to love lying in the back seat and watching the scenery go by and the trees, and yet it's, you know, that's how we're meant to be living. We're meant to be living as that person in the back seat. And I think it was on my mind because yesterday I had a tarot reading from a woman from Peru who's actually in Nanaimo, and she just woke that up in me in a different way in her reading, and I think that's why I had that visual. But ultimately, that's what it is, and it feels so interesting to let go of that control, to not be the driver. The mind does not like that. The personality does not like that. And yet it's so magical when we do. So I'm not sure if that's what you wanted to hear, but that's kind of my take on it.
That's beautiful. And yeah, it feels like it's relevant because it's kind of like, you know, what are all the mechanics of this? Well, there's who you think you are, and then there's actually who you are, and then there's your relationship to the universe. So plus, you know, it was a great reflection tool for me to remember this part. So I might just try to, if people are actually visually watching this, and like, please, Christy, if you have more to add to that, please weigh in. I wonder if I can make this code. So Canva just, oh, that's not what I want. Canva just changed all of these things that are fairly new to me, but I'll just make this big. So in this slide, yeah, personality crystal is related to, this is like the pituitary gland, master gland, yang. This is who you think you are. And this is actually the passenger part of the vehicle. The pineal gland is imprinted from that marker from when we're in utero, and it's related to the bioenergetics of the vehicle. Another way I've heard about this described, it's like, this is when your soul made a contract with your biovehicle body that they build like a weaving together, and that weaving speaks to us differently than our mind speaks to us. It's the consciousness of our yin expression. And then the G center, another way of saying this is, yeah, it holds the illusion. I really like that part. And it draws everything towards you that you're meant to experience in your life. So that idea of being still or static, and then all of life moving past you as if you were in a river and life was the river. And instead of you swimming up the river, you allow the river to flow past you. And that's every person, every experience, every moment, all of that. And we struggle when we try to alter the course of the river or swim up the river, or, you know, all of these different elements of sort of what we have within our, you know, common experience of suffering or struggle or sort of all of these things. So this is the personality is supposed to be in the back seat, like Ross was saying. Magnetic monopole is the one that's actually making life happen to draw magnetically exactly the paired frequency to you that will help you awaken the most to your greatest expression of yourself. And there's a theme throughout your life that your magnetic monopole knows exactly what you need to get what it is that your life is about. And then your body is really the vehicle of the car. You know, it's that yin side. It's that bottom up somatic element. And we will suffer less and be able to celebrate life more when we recognize that we get to get chauffeured around by life. Yeah. Would you add anything to that, Christy?
Yeah, and that's one of the big sixth line themes is this deep surrender and trust in life. And we actually get to be the ones that help model that, you know, for everyone else.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful because, yeah, the design crystal and the magnetic monopole, you know, they've created this beautiful, wise vehicle that is nature, that is a perfect part of the whole and knows exactly what to do and where to go. And the soul actually comes down into the vessel, and that imprint is our design imprint, 88 days before our birth. And it's where the soul meets this perfection of form that's been created. And then we get our second imprint, that moment that the vessel actually emerges out into the world of form. And it's just, I love the synthesis of those two moments to create our entire journey here. Like, it's so beautiful. But yeah.
It makes for a great story.
Yeah, it does. And like the archetypes and the mythology that we get to weave around our journey, like it's so fun. And I feel like that's part of what we're here to do as 6-2s, is to remind people that it's a journey, it's an adventure, it's a story. And yes, we're beyond this, but we're also here now. We're here to take advantage of it and to shine our light and share our gifts and to celebrate life.
Yep. Yep. And the role model piece is such a big part of this theme. It's always a reminder to me of like, that's great, Sarah. You might be able to just sit there and statically judge people for, you know, how great you can see everything, but can you embody it? Can you really, instead of seeing it outwardly in the world, can you make that your own experience to be an embodiment of that which you see in the world? So yeah, I want to touch. Go ahead.
It's a result of all we've had to experience too. We haven't just like read about it. We've lived it.
Yeah.
We've experienced it, and we've gone through the other side of all these things. And that's where the wisdom comes from.
Yes. So I want to touch on the 2 before we go into the 6, because we really want to talk about the 6. Like the 6 is sort of this, like, you know, I want other people that have this profile or 6s in their theme to be able to have a little bit more of maybe the hunger behind what I feel like I haven't gotten in life. And then the more time I spend exploring this, the more I find it reveals itself. So invitation to all 6 lines that hear this, that want to weigh in, please like reach out. But for the 2, so that design side, like the being part around the second line in the 6-2 profile. So more the element of like who you really are is this 2. And we're going to speak about the 6, but we need to speak about the 2 in the sense of the 2 is also called the natural. It's sometimes called the dancer. You know, this brilliant, provocative, courtesy, aggression, freedom, wildness, boundaries, denial, and ease theme of going through life, where it can feel like I don't know how I know what I know, but it just sort of comes online. And then this can lead to this experience of it, for me anyway. Sometimes I have like, you know, the imposter syndrome is a theme, legitimacy, theme of like, I don't know how I know, therefore it must not be legitimate, or how, cite your source, Sarah. How do you know these things? And it's like, I just hear, and then it comes through me, and then it resonates or it doesn't. And sometimes it comes through me with such a profound level of like truth and majesty that it's like, that is not mine. I don't know what that is. It is so miraculous.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful thing. And the challenging part with the two is to just let it be the intelligence of the natural. I don't know how I know, like, Sarah, can I show you how to do this thing? Yeah, perfect. Demonstrate it for me and I'll mimic it and I'll have it like that. I just need the template to be demonstrated and I'll instantly be able to have it. Don't teach me the way you know it. I have a different kind of way of doing it. So when we are working with people that have that too, they can kind of seem like this all, like, it's almost like it's easy to have sort of a resentment against people with a 2 in their activation sequence anyway, or where it shows up, because it's just like, they're just a genius at it. I don't know. They're like the savant at whatever the thing is. And it's like, it's a really beautiful part to kind of, if you know family members, or if you have a partnership with a 6-2 or people that have 2s in their profile, what can be helpful is to recognize like they don't even know how they have it. But the processing element, I know for myself, I get to experience myself in more detail when I have one person to process with. And it's not going to be everybody. I am not for everybody, you're right. But certain people, when I choose those like right kind of match people, the magic of that dynamic, when I'm in a relationship with somebody and I get to be the expression of my 6-2-ness, and that feels good to them, and I get to be witnessed in that, it's like I get to experience my own majesty in that moment. And then all I want to do is help that person experience their own, because that's the nature of the 6-2 also, is to kind of like, now how do I bring this highest sort of level of that into you? And yeah, anything that you would add about the 2, Ross?
Yeah, I think someone said earlier, like, understanding the gifts, understanding what it is that we're a natural at. And that's definitely, and thinking about it more as we've been talking, it has been a mystery to me. Like, I think of like the idea of niche as a place for that, as a placeholder for that. And over the years, it's just like constantly been evolving and changing as I've been going through my experiences. And so, yeah, it has been elusive to me. And it's crazy because as I was sort of reflecting on what we might be talking about, I realized that some themes that have showed up in my life at that, 30 phase to transitioning to the 50 phase. And it's like, I think I might have some clarity around what my niche might look like, but I'm not going to name it. But it's been right there all along. Like, it makes total sense. And it's almost like I wasn't meant to find it until now. And
so beautiful.
my magnetic monopole, and it did come up in the reading yesterday, but it's interesting because I can clearly see how my magnetic monopole over the last week or two has been like drawing in all these experiences and all these teachings and podcasts. And I'm just like, so I'm actually just in the process of connecting the dots of those things. So anyway, and maybe that's something that emerges in this phase for me and for you. Yeah. Because we're all at different phases.
Yeah, Ross holds the status of being post Chiron return. So I'm just going to really quickly go into actually, you know what? Let's hear, you talked about the 2 already. Do you have more to add about the 2, Christy, before we move on to the 6?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I feel like having the 2 on the design side, which is the vehicle side, I feel like there's definitely a connection to our genius in our body, in our vehicle. There's something about taking really good care of our body that will help that genius arise. And I also feel like it might be an auric gift as well. Like, I feel like, I'm curious actually about you, Ross, as a manifesting generator, if you get this sense, but I know Sarah, as a projector, we have a very special aura. We have a penetrating aura. And I feel like part of my gift with my 2 on the design side is the way that my aura works in that dynamic relationship with the other to help them perceive clarity. And it's not something that I consciously can control or do, but when it's happening, I notice it. Things look different all of a sudden to me, and I feel that it's working. That's all I can say, is that it's working.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
Likely in a different way, but I can feel it when it's happening too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I'm often surprised by the reflections that I get back from people. It's like, because I'm just being me, I'm just showing up. It's not like I'm turning on any superpowers. It's just, I'm just authentically
Yeah.
showing up. And then the reflections that come back, you know, confirm what you're suggesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The learning for me around the two was that I need to move my body in order to come to a clearer understanding of a lot of what maybe is showing up in my other intelligence systems. But without me going and moving my body, it's not going to land and come into coherence in the way that it's meant to. And so even with some of the intention work that I do with medicine work, or some of the kind of like layers of personal intention setting, one of the things that I've learned is that I need to dance after I set prayers or intentions for them to really come to fruition. It's like, that's the seal of the whole thing. That's the kiss
Oh,
of
wow.
together, is I need to dance. And then it like makes so much, like, of course you would. A 6-2 profile would have like absolutely have this connection to God and unlimited consciousness, but then need to be the embodiment of it in order to feel that
Yeah.
recognition. And recognition is the other one that shows up much of my life. I've longed for recognition. I've longed to show up for people and then have people say, wow, that really meant a lot to me. Thank you for that. And I've judged myself for longing for the recognition of like, well, you should just do it because it's the kind thing to do, or, you know, like just do things because it's the right thing to do, or any number of these things. And it took me a long time to be like, no, I love to be celebrated. I love
Absolutely.
to be recognized for it.
And it's that energetic exchange, right? You're
Yeah.
giving, and it's also appropriate to receive. And that's what feels so good, is it's this cycle.
Yeah. 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 So I celebrate people recognizing people more now. And so many people have said to me, wow, I didn't even know that I was allowed to ask for that. I was like, yeah, doesn't it feel good though? It really does. It really does. So then the 6. So the 6 line, this is a kind of a neat thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the 5 lines. This is what I was taught. And I'm like, oh, please correct anything that you hear that you're like, well, I heard something a little bit different, or here's something that I would add to it. That the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of the hexagram. So this comes from the way that hexagrams are built, and the way that, and you know, original I Ching was like, we cast coins. A coin would, 3 coins would be displayed to show either a broken or a solid line. You do that 6 times and you build what's called a hexagram. And it's this combination of a broken line, which is a yin line, or a solid line, which is a yang line. And there's 64 combinations of lines that can come together with those 6. So that's where that 64 kind of attributes of truth come from. And that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are referring to the matter realm. They're referring to the realm that we live in, that is related to different elements of the chakras, consciousness, and themes around the body relative to the matter realm. And the 6th line sits outside of that, and it is an observer, and it follows this theme, which is like this 3-phase theme in life. So 0 to 30 is trial and error and lots of experimental learning, a lot of experiential learning, a lot of doing something that somebody maybe says, hey, don't touch that hot thing. But it's like, well, I need to burn myself in order to discover that that thing is hot, actually. And maybe you're right, but I won't know unless I do it. And so in that theme, for me, it was really easy to judge myself for being like, why did I have to learn the hard way on all of this stuff? You know, why did I have to have such a troublesome childhood, or a troublesome kind of early phase of my life? And then in discovering this is like, that's a theme for 6s. 6s have this tendency to have a way of their bio vehicle going through life, needing to touch, taste, feel, and be in direct contact with everything, even if it's sometimes damaging or painful or disruptive in some way. And then we go into this phase of integration of all of that pain, where it feels like, okay, I've been in the war zone of life, experiencing all of these challenging things. And I think I'd like to step back a little bit and not be so much in the trial and error phase of it. But it's like, what did it all mean? And why did I have to? So we go into this 20-year phase of therapy, essentially, where it's like, we have a family between 30 and 50. It's like, I don't want to, you know, have all of the same experiences in the same way, but the hunger for experience is still there, is what I found in my kind of this middle phase that I'm in. The hunger is still there. And then this mystical part of all of it for those of us that are still not yet to our Chiron return is like this, apparently it all comes together in this way where you take the integration of all of that pain, and the experience of life now has been able to take you through the first line, through the second line, through the third line, through the fourth line, and through the fifth line, so that all of the teachings of all of the 5 lines that are up to the 6 become a part of the 6 line embodiment. And so there's this ability to hold the resonance of all of the attributes of truth within. And then that creates that, back to that sort of magnetic drawing of this, like, people feel a freedom around a 6-2 that they might not feel around somebody else, because it feels like, well, I feel like they got some knowledge for me, I feel like they got something because of, all of that diversity in life. And so then there's this phase, the last phase, called coming off the roof, which I get. We can talk about the house and the roof and all of those things. I get this kind of allegory. I think Ross and I have spoken about it a couple times, and you were like, I don't know if I really understand it, but it's this theme of stepping into life with this transcended knowledge, all of this information that's come through in life. And what I'm realizing just this year is I'm in a deep growth around the 5th line. And that would make sense that I would be at the 5th line at 45 years of my life. And so everything for me has been this, like, studying of, like, what is projection? What is this victim, perpetrator, savior dynamic that goes on with projection, and the way that the nervous system has a relationship with victim, perpetrator, savior? And in particular, as a 6th line, I'm like, how do we transform victim frequency into empowered frequency? Because I feel like that's a really big part of what I'm here to lead people through, is, like, victim frequency is the material that we need to love into our empowered frequency. But if we're in denial of it, or if we're still in so much pain body around it, then it stays this pattern, which keeps us stuck in this pattern. And when we can love it, that pattern starts to shift. And in order for me to do that as a 6-2, I was like, well, then I need to love my own victim frequency, which means I get to go into this deep dance around my own victim frequency right now. So I'm learning a lot about the majesty of the 5 and the ways that these projection dynamics work, and sort of, the transcend and include piece. It's like all of the lines are a part of the 6th line by that point of life where it all starts to come together. So Ross, I'll get you to speak about, the 3 phases, and maybe your experience of the 3 phases would be super sweet too.
I feel like as you were talking, I was just, like, going through all the timeline of my life and just kind of imagining. So I got lost a little bit thinking about some of those points. And I think for me, the thing that jumps out is that, and I think this is a bit of a theme for the 6-2, is that I feel like I could be perceived as a slow learner, but all of that was in the name of experiencing and going through all these things. And so it's always, for me, and that's been part of it, is, like, feeling like I'm, like, behind when it comes to comparing myself to other friends or where other people are at. And so it's like some people will put themselves in that position of being the teacher and the prophet, if you will, and somehow they just magically get there. And for me, the journey has been through experience, and in this last phase from 50 onwards, I've really felt that place that I had seen others get to quite quickly. And and part of that, I now know, has been gathering all the experiences. And so for me, and I think when I reflect on the timeline, there's been some bleeding over. It's not necessarily a precise 30 years, or, there's definitely, in 30 to 50, I've also had, like, lots of experiences that I went through that were quite deep and but different, definitely different. Like when you were talking about, the 5th line experience, I'm like, oh yeah, like that was me in 2014, like totally. 2014 was when things really switched for me in terms of, having an initiation weekend through men's work, and, I think finally growing up. And so, that was kind of late, but leading me to this 3rd phase. So yeah, I really love that container of what it looks like through those phases. And it's it's so it's hard to even speak to it in some ways because of how profound it is. And just seeing the patterns and being at this place of being able to confidently face all sorts of situations and topics, and not necessarily have the book experience, but definitely have the related life experience to support people. And I can't even explain it sometimes. Like it's so profound.
Yeah. Yeah. Ineffable. Some of those,
Hmm.
it's like the mind and the language center can't really get to the knowingness element of what it can be like to be a 6. And then when you throw the theme of the 2 in there, where it's like, I don't know how I know what I know.
Yeah.
You really see this kind of recipe for being like, I have a knowingness and it's really important, and I'm not sure how to transmit it. So then it almost gives us this like invitation of like, well, then you have to be an embodiment of it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Christy? Was there things around like the triphasic sort of element that I missed, or more that you would add? Or
Yeah, for me, I mean, it just knowing about the tripart process of the 6th line, I resonated so strongly with it because that was exactly my experience, where I was a total wild child for my first 30 years, really living like a 3, that great life experimenter, you know, throwing myself into all kinds of crazy situations. I remember at one point I hitchhiked to Mexico by myself because, again, that 6th line, even in the 3rd line phase, really wants to discover the truth. And I wanted to know if life was trustworthy. And my experience showed me that good people came to my aid the entire journey. Like, it was magical. But I really made a lot of mistakes. And I was truly living as my not self. That I look at that first 30 years as just my not self time. Which is perfect and beautiful because I needed to have that experience in order to experience the contrast of who I really am. Like, once I discovered human design and I started integrating all of those earlier experiences and just getting clarity around the fact that I wasn't being myself. I was, you know, I'm very open. I only have 2 defined centers in my chart. So I really take on a lot of energy from other people and basically become very chameleon, like who I'm around. And yeah, so I've gained so much clarity, and now I'm on the roof phase, which is this beautiful kind of integrating all of that earlier experience. And I still feel like I have to make mistakes in order to learn things. Like, I feel like that's just part of my way, is doing it wrong first and then seeing the result of that in order to get it right the next time. But I've had my kids, you know, on the roof phase. And so again, there's a lot of experience, new experiences, but it's different. It's in a way, it's more grounded and more settled. And I call them smaller experiences, personal experiences, but I'm still growing and learning. And I love, Ross, that you're on the roof and you can share or off the roof, and you can share your experience, because I'm really looking forward to 50. Like, I'm really looking forward to this promise of flowering that the 6th line has around 50. And I feel like that's just the beginning for us. I really feel like 50 is just the beginning, where we
Yeah.
really get to start shining in the world and sharing our wisdom in this whole new profound way. I mean, been building up for so long. So one of the things about the 6th line that I've always resonated to is that we're late bloomers.
Yeah.
We need to have patience in our process, and just, you know, understand that we're not here to rush. We're here to gently and slowly and deliberately, like, become embodied wisdom.
yeah. And for people that
Mhm.
love a 6-2, or for people that are a different profile that don't understand somebody in their life that has a 6th line theme, it could be so helpful to say to them, this wife or this husband or this brother or this kid or whatever, you're going to need to be patient with them. It'll all make sense later, and it might not for a very long time. But if you're
Yeah.
willing to love them and be patient, they're absolutely worth it, because these beings are magical. They just hold a very unique resonance field that's so
Mhm.
needed. And it will be strange to be in relationship with them. It'll be weird. It'll be unpredictable. They don't even know themselves. Like, it can be so, My niece is a 6'2", and I've been so grateful to be the aunt of this woman because I feel like I get to repattern a lot of my own inner child stuff, where when stuff comes up with my sister and her husband, and they'll phone me and be like, this is coming up with Hannah, what do we do? And I'm like, oh, perfect. Okay. So it's actually this, like, she just really needs to go. And she's a projector as well. Like, just give her time to go reset her energy. You guys are all generators and manifesting generators. And it can be a lot as a projector to be in a family of generators and manifesting generators. And there's this intensity behind that energy. And for us, we're like, this feels really violent. And it feels like there's a lot happening. And now I'm really scared and I want to run away. But if you know that you can keep attachment, and you know that you can give permission to that person to be something that you're like, you know what? It's okay. Sarah might be on this like lost soul discovery mission, but I trust that it's all going to come together. And 50 years is a substantial amount of time to have trust and patience, right?
It
Like,
sure
it's
is.
no joke. And then in my profile, I have 6 lines in my gene keys. So
Wow.
like, I
Mhm.
basically have like, I'm in utero until I'm 50. I'm essentially born and like in 2027, which is when this whole prophecy kind of comes together. So I'm like, of course you would be born in 2027.
Yeah,
Or
actually, that's beautiful. And
yeah.
it's cool because Ross said, like in 2027, we're moving into the 55.6. So it's a 6-line time. And he said,
Mhm.
this is the time where the 6 lines are actually going to get to come down off the roof and get involved and to shine. So we're really going to be supported by the cosmic energies, coming up here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yay.
Yay. It's about time. All you 6 lines out there that are listening to this, if you've listened this far in, you're probably a 6 line or in love with a 6 line, first of all. And then there's these themes. And so I'm just going to read like through the spheres of like the 11 spheres of the Gene Keys profile. So if you've got your human design profile or your Gene Keys profile and you're looking at the themes with the 6 lines, I'm going to speak to it from the Gene Keys side of it. So the life's work, the mark of a 6 line there is as a teacher. And that as a 6 line, we're here to teach and practice embodiment, and that we came here to learn education and surrender. So from the perspective of the conscious earth in human design or the evolution in Gene Keys, it's this theme of hunger for information, hunger for more knowledge, more wisdom that never really goes away. So allowing yourself to like surrender to your hunger for knowledge, surrender to your patience, surrender to trusting in life. Those that have the 4-6 profile, is there another? Oh yeah, is there another way to get a 6 other than the 4-6 profile in your radiance?
6-3.
Yeah.
6-3.
Right. Okay. So, but for people that have 6 in the radiance and purpose, this theme is like to nurture yourself and others in order to be healthy. And then this other
Oh.
theme of the 6 as a marker in the purpose is this it's called intent, or it's like a cellular knowing. So it's like a knowing of universal consciousness that isn't necessarily clear as to what it is, but there's a communication between cellular consciousness and nature consciousness, I would say. Do you guys describe it any differently than that for the radiance and purpose spheres, or those unconscious spheres with the 6
I
lines?
just see it a little bit connected to the 6th tone, which is,
That's great.
linked through the color, but the tone is very much about skin. It's about aura. It's about,
Mm.
so I can understand the cellular connection, but then I also think of it as like our wrapping kind of connected to everything out there. It's, yeah, quite beautiful.
I love that. I love that. I feel that with the 4-6 profiles that I get to be around too.
Mm.
Yeah. So then in the Venus sequence, if we take this now, and this, I'll just do like a very cursory kind of pass over this. So this purpose sphere becomes this expression of the judge and the visionary. So on a lower sort of essence, it can be this judgmental, aloofness, or this arrogance theme that can show up around 6s, where it's like, well, they just think they're so holier than thou. And it's actually just that a lot of the time we're like not sure where we fit into everything, and we're waiting for that moment to drop in. And so we're circling around trying to figure out, where's that moment for me to drop into this? And it takes
Yeah.
us a while to kind of get a sense of where that might be. So it can seem like we're arrogant or not interested. That hasn't been my theme, or what I would say is the theme is like, I'm very, very interested in the things that are relevant to visioning and where humanity's going, and sort of, I'm not interested in the shallow parts. It's not that I think I'm better than that. I just feel like, wow, but there's this, and we could go into this. And so that can be sometimes intimidating to be around for people. It's a theme
Yeah.
I hear often, is like, you're so intimidating. It's like, hey,
Oh,
I'm so loving. I really love people. The sixth line I also have in my attractor field, and this was so helpful. So for people that have a sixth line in their attractor field, if they want to look it up, in a relationship, even though you have a strong desire for a soulmate, it's this theme of taking your time to recognize your partnering. There's a level that, even though, like, even a lot of people would say that they're looking for their soulmate. I think a lot of people would kind of recognize that. For a sixth line, it never really is any other way. We're always
yeah.
like, where's my other counterpart in this life, is like this hunger that it feels like to have a sixth line in my attractor field. I know that there's other souls here that are my collaborative souls, and I am really interested in finding them. I have this deep longing and desire to, from that space in my attractor field, hold a resonance that's a match for those
Yeah.
people that I'm meant to draw towards me. And so, if you look at traditional dating, or you look at traditional relationship counseling, it can be so helpful to look at this element of the sexual wound, this nature to our yang and our yin inherently, and how it shows up in the world, and then how that is going to, chemically communicate with the partners that we have. And there's beautiful teachings around that yeah, we're not going to go into.
Well, this sphere, actually, you can see how it's connected to the last sphere you just talked about, because there's this theme with the sixth line of really not wanting to get involved unless it's totally worth it. That's that whole kind of sitting on the fence of
Where's
this
this going?
line
Yeah.
where it's, yes, I care so deeply, but I'm only going to get involved if it's deeply transformational, like if
Yes,
it really makes a difference.
totally.
And I'm only going to get into that relationship if it's my soulmate, if it's like that kind of intense, deep relationship.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that part up, because there's been this theme where I've been in relationships with people with different lines, and they're like, what are you talking about? We had a great experience. And I'm like, it wasn't transformational, and we didn't change the world. In my book, that was a failure. And they're like, what? We had so much fun together. I'm like, no, I have a different marker that I'm looking for in this. And so, yeah, understanding your part. What is your attractor field, Ross? Do you have a sixth line in there?
It's no, it's 30.2.
Oh, nice. You got the
It's a
two.
two line.
You
Yeah,
got the two theme. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to just kind of go past some of those. Like the attractor field is this disappointment, innocent, but resigned and ecstatic. So this can be in relationship, where it shows up as this chemistry theme in relationship, where it's like, oh, I get apathetic. I'm just like, it doesn't matter. I'm never gonna find my soulmate. It's too hard. I'm not even gonna try. The world doesn't get me. I don't belong. Like that sort of monologuing, martyrish theme that can happen with the lower expression of the sixth line. But the ability to be an ecstatic, this is new for me. So this sixth line theme of ecstatic, I thought ecstatics were dead saints, and that they had this experience with God, that I didn't get to have this experience with God. And then the more I started studying it, the more I'm like, oh, I'm an ecstatic. I experience ecstasy. I can experience ecstasy over a strawberry, or a brush of wind, or a poem, and it's like something takes over my body, the Shakti, this energy that runs through me, and I get to experience what it is to be a witness to life force running through me. That's how I would describe being an ecstatic. So it's, from a sixth line, of course, I would say this. I'm like, it's actually the meaning of life to experience that. It's actually what life is all about. If you took out everything else and only left the experience of what it is to be a human, it's to be in a relationship with bringing heaven to earth. And I feel like six lines have this ability to bring heaven to earth. And
Yeah.
that's a big part of what we're here to do, but it has to come through the body. It has to come through this. No, not reading to you what heaven is. It's like, allow me to be an embodiment of heaven. And even being in the field of people that are resonating like this, it's it's a beautiful experience. But in relationship, we can be, highly objective, sort of absent in a way, sort of seen as like separate in a dynamic, because there's like there's a witnessing sort of chemistry that goes through the body. And then,
Mhm.
so you got to move into the pearl sequence. It's like the sixth line, the where's it going that you said, Christy, is like this,
Yeah.
like now if we take this and we show up in the world with where it's going, the sixth line organically is like an investor type or a philanthropic type. There's somebody that looks at the culture and the systems within a culture to understand why something would be thriving or not thriving, to understand the way energy is flowing. And then what does this mean for our children and our children's children, and so on, is like this theme
That
that
farsightedness.
yeah, the
Mhm.
farsightedness is a theme. The needing to understand and not wanting to commit to something unless I know that it's the highest, best possible path for everybody. And if it's not, then somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm always going to be wondering, is this the highest and best path for everybody to kind of get to that space? So yeah, I'm sensitive to, we only have about another 20 minutes and I want to, or 18 minutes, and I want to make sure that we still have more time to share. I feel like I've been talking lots. Ross, for you, like, what are other parts that are really alive for you around the sixth line that you wanted to share? I know you had this cool story drop in, and I'd really love to hear if you'd be willing to share of like in preparation for the podcast. You're like, oh yeah, a
Mhm.
couple of things have dropped in. Is that something you'd be willing to share with people?
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed that my marriage, the marriage in which I had both my kids, that was ended when I was 29. So that was right before 30. And then at 50, I had a relationship end as well, a significant one.
Wow.
So I just really was like, oh, that's interesting. And, there's a theme there that I want to explore further. Um, yeah, and I would imagine that we all have those kind of themes showing up in some way, and we just don't see it. And
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, the sixth piece for me, there was something you just said that I wanted to speak to, and it's gone.
Okay,
Oh well.
I want to know for you after 50, did you feel like it all like came together in this way that you were like, "Oh, I'm starting to notice the coming off the roof energy." Is that something you've been able
Hmm.
to observe, and like what is that like?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I turned 50, I felt it in my body in a way. It just happened, but I was really excited. I was like, I could, and I didn't know about 6-2 yet at that point. I don't think I did anyway. And it was just palpable. I was like so excited because I could feel the shift, that something was different and that I was in a different phase of my life and that I was on a new trajectory, and it was beautiful. And I've been feeling that. I've definitely been feeling that. And I also feel that it's also escalating. There was something that someone said earlier that I was like, I got really excited because yes, like 2027 you were speaking about,
Yeah.
and it's like I can feel that coming. I've always felt that something was coming. That
Mhm.
there, and of course, like I'll be fully ready to be of service now and then.
Beautiful.
And it's going to be needed for sure. And it's already, I'm already seeing it. People are really searching for these kind of things, and
Yeah.
searching for this awareness. But I think part of the thing that's so, like, I started this journey at 30. So it's been like, almost 25 years of staying the course, of trusting, doing my own work along the way and wanting to be of service. I think 2006 is when I did my life coach training, and wanting to do that, but also having to experience as well, along the way. So it's this interesting, almost tension. But I called it, earlier. You referred to it as, blossoming, like the blossoming. I referred to it as slow learner. But yeah, I do feel like I'm blossoming as I've passed this 50 mark, which is, it's super exciting.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice. If that other part comes to you, please just interrupt and
It's
jump
okay. Yeah.
in. Christy, you spoke to something that I want to touch on too, and that is that we're coming into the time of the sixth line, this
Yeah.
2027, this prophecy. What the prophecy is that humanity is going to really vastly shift their value system and really start to integrate some of our gifting that we have that's been latent in a new way around sort of more attributes of universal love and universal consciousness and collective awareness and other kind of elements of humanity that, as a result of what I like to say, we have this nervous system, which was our survival nervous system. And our survival nervous system did a really good job of bringing our species to the level of consciousness that we're at right now. But the survival nervous system at this phase of our development is actually holding us back in some ways. And so it's really stepping into this, what I call the divine nervous system, or this alignment with a cause that's greater than the individual cause, a purpose that's greater than the individual purpose. And in order for us to do that, there's themes that are going to need to play out, and our value systems will change as a result of that. And astrologically, you look at like, oh, we're coming out of the age of Pisces and going into the age of Aquarius. And the age of Aquarius is this theme of like, you water me, I water you. It's very interdependent, and instead of this codependent pattern. So I would argue that the prophecy is humanity's moving out of codependence and moving into interdependence. And in order to do that, we need to stand in sovereignty and come to recognize, who am I really, so that I can know how to be of the greatest expression in service to the whole. And codependence kept us of like, you do this role and I'll do this role, and then we'll resent each other back and forth until until we break up, or until we're completely agitated with our projection of what is going on in this dynamic. And so what's so beautiful to look at in this theme for being able to look at people's charts and being able to work together in this way is that we can say, here's who you are really. Now, how does that land for you, and what do you want to do with it, and what does that actually sort of look like, and permission to find out what that is for yourself. So when you say we're coming into a 6-line theme, what does that mean? What's your understanding of that? And even if you know some of the mechanics of part of that, and like the precession of the equinoxes and those other parts, and you want to touch on that, that'd be awesome too.
Yeah, I guess it just made me feel that it's really time for the 6th-line wisdom to shine and to be recognized. And to really, because the world needs it. The world needs the way that we see in this far-sighted, sustainable, holistic kind of perspective, that does include everyone, doesn't leave anyone out. And it's like, how we're in this together. And I love the way you just phrased this, everything you just said. It's so beautiful how we're moving into this time of interrelation. And the only way we can do that is to be in our own power, to be in our own sovereignty and authority. And I love that dance between being true to our individuality and our authenticity. And from that place, coming into the whole with our, our gifts that we're actually here to share, our authentic gifts, and just how beautiful the world could be. Like, that's how I see the world. We're here to enrich each other from our authentic nature. One thing I really wanted to share with you about the 6th line is that the mystery surrounding the 6th line and where we're going, because the 6th line sees beyond the horizon. So like you said, it embodies all of the energy of the hexagram, and yet it's all at the same time, it's beyond the hexagram. So when you look at the wheel, a key for each of us as a 6th line is to actually look over to the next hexagram in the wheel. And that first line of the next hexagram, I feel like, is a key to how we're here to express our 6th line. So for you, Sarah, you have the 33.6, which is your medicine woman. That's your wisdom speaker. And when you look over at the 7 archetype, which is next in the wheel for you, that's the embodied guide. Like, you're here to use your medicine words and your wisdom to empower people, to guide people. And the first line is the authority figure. So the more you do that, the more you can step into this role of authority and be in your bigness to help empower people and guide people. And then Ross, for you, you have the 11.6, which is the idealist. And it's this, you're like the idea fountain, right? You've got like this amazing, abundant mind. And then when you look over in the hexagram, what was the next one in the 11 after you?
I can look on my calendar.
What's the 10? You're 10. My son. You've got the 10 next in the hexagram.
Yeah.
So the 10.
And I also have the 10 in my activation sequence. Do I? Wait.
You also do. You have
no. Sorry, 10 is my core wound.
Yeah, it's your sacred wound. Yes, you already have that energy, but then looking at that as like your 6ness and like moving from I think your 11.6 is adaptability and like just really being sensing like what ideas are going to bring value in the moment for people. Like you have this sense of what is the idea that's going to make a difference now. And then that moves into the 10, which is all about this naturalness and being and actually just completely loving and accepting yourself for exactly where you're at right now.
It's a
And then I
really
looked at
Yeah, I
mine.
really feel that.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
great perspective to to look at that. Totally. That the 6 is standing in the space of the 1 in the next and where we're going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where we're going. That's where we're looking.
Yeah.
And it just made so much sense to me because my 10.6 is looking into the 58.1, which is love of life.
Yeah.
So the more I love myself, the more I can just be myself authentically, the more love I have for this life, and the more I can kind of embody that and just be in love with the form of it all.
Yeah.
And I found another little hint is when you look at the actual energy centers of where those gates are. Like for you, Sarah, it's in the throat, and it's that movement into the G center, into that love and direction. As well for you, Ross, it's that movement from the ajna into that love and direction center. And for me, it's that love and direction center into my root. So for me, I just feel like that movement of being grounded and embodied and embracing the form is my way forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like, wow. I got a hint of some of your genius in like that last couple of minutes there. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like really beautiful what you just brought forward. And it feels really, again, this like confirmation piece that I get around this heart and trusting that like I will always be in the right place at the right time for whatever magic is supposed to happen in that moment, and trusting like, you know, as projectors, it can be this fear of like, am I going to get invited? Do I
Yeah.
belong? And then to come to this, you know, this, actually, Sarah, you're here to learn that that is always going to be the truth, that the right people will always find you and recognize. And if you're not being found and recognized, then this is like, you know, rejection is God's protection theme. You know, you're not meant to be in that spot. You're meant to be somewhere else, and you will be guided somewhere else. And we can take these things so personally, right? It's like, I was rejected by this group, or I was rejected by this job, or I, you know, believed my life was going in this direction with a relationship. And we can get stuck. I can get stuck in the wound around that and not recognize the perfection of, no, you're just being nudged in a greater alignment. That's all that's happening for you now. And yeah,
Nothing is ever going wrong.
yeah. 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 And then so the last kind of, you know, 6-line thing that's coming to me is this part of this theme around 6 lines are here to change the way people think. You know, 5th lines are here to change the way people behave. 4th lines are here to change the way people feel. There's all of these themes that is offered by each of the consciousnesses of the lines, and we're here to change the way the collective thinks about life and themselves and all of these things. So yeah.
Okay. Can I say something about that? Because I just connected something. I was recently on Vancouver Island and connecting with people, and I really noticed a lot of discussion around polarities. And I'm not going to name any of those polarities, but we live in a world of division at the moment, it feels like, and it's this choice or that choice. And there's so much dialogue happening about this choice or that choice, or this person or that person. And I couldn't let go this piece throughout those conversations, or at least witnessing them, of like, wait a second, like those are just distractions. There's a new way that's trying to emerge. And we need to start asking ourselves, why are we trusting in a system that is this broken, rather than focusing on the distraction? And I feel like I just connected the piece around that being a very 6-line perspective. And it is where we're going. Like, we can't rely on, we have to ask ourselves, why are we even having these conversations that are so divisive, rather than what's the solution? What does it need to look like? Why are we talking? Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on.
No, I love
I'll
that.
stop there.
That's
so
such a point of view.
Yeah, it's so good. And this 5th-line contemplation that I've been in has led me into studying more around Tantra and like the Kala Chakra Tantra teachings, which is like holding the paradoxes simultaneously and giving both a space. So the shadow is meant to hold the same or the resonance of one side and the city of another. But if I'm in expression only of chasing after the cities, then my shadows are going to be the thing that gets avoided and comes toppling down
Right.
on me. And division does
Right.
that, right? Division's like one or the other. And what I would
Yeah.
say the 6-line teaching is like all of it.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, totally.
Mhm.
I love what you just said about that, because I had an epiphany about the shadow and that journey from the shadow to the city, and that it's actually not linear. Like, it's actually all happening simultaneously, and we're not potentially never going to be rid of the shadow. Like, it is like, it's part of it. It's here to remind us when we
And
forget.
inform us. Yeah.
It's here to inform us, right? So every day can have moments of shadow and moments of city, and it's all just dancing within us all the time.
Yep. Totally agree. I would just say the shadow is those moments where we adopt an expression or a patterning, like look for things that your parents said, money doesn't grow on trees. And then like it'll just come out of your mouth one day and you're like, wait a second, like I don't actually even want to be saying that. That's just a moment of like, oops, I tripped into an unconscious pattern and it's just displaying. And when we can expect those to be a part of us, instead of it being like, well, I can't have shadows, I must only live in the gift or the city, then we don't recognize that they're meant to show us, hey, there's this other pattern here. Would you like to take a look at it now? Right. And so like, yeah, in any moment we're a seed, we're the flower, we're the
Yes.
stalk, we're the leaves, we're the seed, we're the flower, we're the stalk. And like, that's life. It's all of it. But education has kind of given us this idea of like, it's truncated and like, there's this section and then this section and then this section and then this section. And then you're an elder and nobody's allowed to question you and whatever, sort of whatever that looks like. Ross, I see you get like glancing at the clock. You have an 11 o'clock you got to jump on.
No, I was actually no.
Okay.
I was just looking at my that chart.
Okay. Sweet.
It's all good.
Sweet. Well, I know you do have to go, so I just want to, thank you
Yeah,
for.
I've got a few minutes. We can end in a good way, so no
Okay,
rushing.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add or bring in summary or any parts that you'd like to
There-
speak to for next time? Where's your 6-line see this going?
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing I wanted to bring up because I'm a manifesting generator as opposed to projectors. And I think what's interesting for me in terms of gathering wisdom is that, like, one of the things about manifesting generators that I always use as an example is like, how many unfinished books do you have lying around, and it's this extra layer of like, I literally just feels like sometimes I hold a book and I get what I need from it and I don't need to read it. And that's another layer of like, how can I explain how I got this information and how I gathered this wisdom when I'm not even finishing the course or the book or whatever it is. So I just wanted to speak to that as an MG. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on the types. We could do that next because
Totally.
the types are really like, it's really, those different auric types that we're speaking about. If this is new to you, there's 5 different auric types that are on the spectrum again of like most yang in their auric expression to most yin in their auric expression. And my sister's a manifesting generator. I have many close friends that are manifesting generators. And the thing that I've discovered is like, wow, they have a capacity to multitask like nobody's business. Like I can actually just keep throwing balls at them and they'll just be like, yes, give me more.
Sure.
But if I did that with a generator or somebody that has a different orientation, that wouldn't feel great for them. So yeah, it's beautiful to celebrate these elements of self and instead of being like, oh no, you're ADD because you can't focus on,
Right.
one thing at a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Christy, anything that you want to share for summary or where do you see this going?
Yeah, I just wanted to share one way of looking at the 6-2 that I really like and resonate with is Jenna Zoe calls the 6-2 the exemplary human. And it's like having this vision of what your dream human being would be like. And we each kind of have that seed. I feel like each 6-2 has a seed inside each of us where we really want to manifest and embody our dream self. And it's full of integrity and it's full of our highest potential. Like we're really the ones who are driven to realize our fullest potential. And I'm just curious if you relate with that definition of the 6-2.
Hmm.
Only
Yeah.
now in my life, I think for much of my life, I would have been like, no, I'm the opposite of exemplary. I have so far to go to get to exemplary, which would make sense for with having so many sixes, is I wouldn't be able to find that about myself in my earlier years because I was so a three is the theme that plays out for the six until they come off the roof. So yeah, lots of trial and error and lots of like really, I do remember this theme when I was younger of being like, when people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I want to be everything. I want to have a motorcycle and I want to travel and I want to have jobs and I want to live in the city and I want to live in the country. And I was like, I wanted everything. And so it's really easy to be like, she's a bit of a lost soul. She doesn't know what she wants. And so what I've come to recognize in this exemplary human part is that I wanted to go find all of the exemplary humans in the world and see how they were doing it and learn from them. And so I've been in this pursuit of mentorship for the last 45 years where I've been able to practice and work with people that are standing in their genius and like, be a benefit to that inspiration and then allow that to permeate me and then allow myself to start stepping into this role model part where it's like, now I get to be that for other people. And how do I do that at the highest possible scale? And so much of what I find it is compassion and patience and loving people for where they're at and just loving whatever they bring is like, it's perfect for this. And that feels to me like exactly how I want to live my life.
Oh, so beautiful.
How about for you? As far
For
as like,
me, for
yeah,
us,
what does it mean to be an exemplary human for you?
um, for me, it's not compared to anyone else. It's just this inner feeling that I have that I want to be my highest self. Like I really truly want to be in love, versus anything else. And I want to take the high mature road in situations. I want to be emotionally mature, non-reactive. I want to be that role model. I want to be that wise sage, like we talked about before. Like, why aren't there the she wizards? I want to be a she wizard. I want to be mystical, but I want to be grounded. I want to be the fullest expression of the cosmos in human form. I want to be a channel for divine energy and light. I want to be it all.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Permission to be Gandalf. I want to be Gandalf, but hot and younger. And those things, like nobody really tells you that as a young woman. That you're allowed to want to be Gandalf and a bikini. Oh, well, thank you so much, both of you, for making the time to share this. And yeah, I feel like we could do a 2.0 in the sixth line for, there's going to be more that comes in as a result of us sharing it in this way. And then, there's lots we could speak about if you guys would be willing to talk more, and we'll see how it lands for people. But we're going to share this out to anybody that wants to know more about being a 6-2. And yeah, I'm so grateful for your exemplary humanness and showing up in this way. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
You know what? Maybe I'll get you, Ross. Why don't you just like plug yourself for 1 minute? How could people find you?
Plug.
Yeah, like what?
My
How can people
website
find
is
you?
my website is rosstayler.com, and it's Tayler with E. So it's ROSSTAYLER.com. And that's the easiest way to find me. I'm not on Instagram. I am on Facebook. Yeah.
Sweet. And Christy?
Yeah, I'm Sun Spirit Human Design on Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Yeah. Mine, well, probably the best way to find me is goldenguidance.online or visionary health entrepreneur with underscores between the words. And I like look forward to and welcome more people that are interested in discovering how to shine as themselves.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Christy. So nice to meet you.
You too.